sometimes controversial, always politically incorrect, and pro-life without exception, without compromise, and without apology. It's the Pro-Life America podcast with your hosts, Sarah Waits and the president of Life Dynamics, Mark Crutcher.
Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. I'm Mark Crutcher, as you heard, and joining me is my worthy co-host, Sarah Waits.
Hello, everyone.
We got a real important subject here we're going to be talking about in a minute, and that basically how to talk to women about abortion that are thinking
who are considering abortion.
Mm-hmm. But before we get to that, a couple of things came out just in the last day or so that I just want to touch on. In England, the town council of Bournemouth, England, Christchurch, of all places, and Poole in southern England.
So those are all cities.
All cities in England have now made it illegal to cross yourself, make the sign of the cross. And there's some other things that you can get in trouble for. They have a fine of up to £100, which is about a little over $100. Reading scripture or sprinkling holy water behind these so-called red lines, which they put around abortion clinics.
Which is basically their version of the bubble zones.
It's their version of the bubble zone, but they've taken it to the next step.
So you can't do the sign of the cross, you can't read Bible scripture, and you cannot have holy water that you sprinkle on yourself or other people.
Anybody else.
This is so crazy.
This is coming to America. Don't make any bones about it. You think the Biden administration wouldn't do this if they could?
Yeah.
But remember, we had that situation a couple of years ago where a pastor in Canada was charged with violation of Canada's hate speech laws for literally reading exactly what the Bible says about homosexuality. Just reading out of the Bible. He was charged with violating their hate speech laws. Now, to some degree, you can't be too surprised because we know how the godless have taken over governments. But you can't be too surprised at this stuff when you hear about this other story that's come out. The Pope has now appointed a pro-abortion economist. Are you ready for this? To the Pontifical Academy for Life.
For non-Catholics, what is the Pontifical Academy for Life?
Well, it was created by Pope John Paul II with a pro-life mission. And originally it was, quote, to study information and formation on the principal problems of biomedicine and law relative to the promotion and defense of life, above all in the direct relation that they have with Christian morality and the directives of the Catholic magisterium.
So basically they're a board that navigates science, ethics, and church doctrine, basically.
Yes. And they had a written rule in there that to be a member of this academy, of this board, you had to be pro-life. You had to recognize the right to life of the unborn child from the moment of fertilization. But in 2016, they removed that requirement that the members have to declare themselves pro-life.
So that was the first step. And now with the appointing of somebody who's clearly pro-choice, I would think that that means that the church is signaling that their position on abortion would be changing.
I don't know if their official position on abortion would be changed, but it doesn't matter. If they have an official position but they don't live by it, what's the point? You know.
Absolutely.
This is a scandal. There's no other way you can classify this other than a complete scandal. If we were Catholics, which we're not, but if we were, we would, and rightly so, be outraged about this. I'm outraged about it, and I'm not a Catholic. But this is a pure 100% scandal. There's no other way to classify it. To put this woman on there.
Well, this is not surprising. I mean, one of the oldest pro-choice organizations is a reproductive, quote, reproductive rights group who is solely comprised of clergy. They have been trying to get the church onto the pro-choice message for a long time, starting with each and every individual pastor.
Meaning the abortion lobby.
Yes. So we can't be surprised when you see Catholic hierarchy doing this.
Yeah, I mean, that gives them cover. These heretical groups that you're talking about now, if someone questions them, they can look over here and say, well, wait a minute. They just took out the requirement in the Academy for Life, right? Yeah. That you don't have to be pro-life. And now he's appointed this, not just minor pro-abort. This woman is a staunch pro-abort. They've appointed her to this board. That gives them cover.
Yeah, I've seen a number of articles from, quote, pro-choice clergy. And one of the most that I clearly remember is an article where this woman was comparing women who are in unplanned pregnancy situations to the Good Samaritan parable in the Bible.
This is pornography. This is religious pornography is what that is. Also, I want to talk a little bit, just for a second, the Democrat Party, and now Biden, has come out saying that if we retain control of Congress and we gain control of the Senate, I'm going to...
federal law protecting abortion,
This is a Hail Mary pass or grandstand pass because they know they're losing. They're trying to say, if you want us to keep abortion legal, you better elect us to Congress and to the House.
Yeah.
You see in the newspaper, which is providing cover for them, that they're saying things like, well, since Roe was overturned, there's been this massive influx of women coming into the voting booth and that they're going to be...
That may be true, but that's a huge assumption if you're naturally assuming that they're going to be on your side.
They're all assuming that they're pro-aborts.
Yeah.
When all the statistics that have ever been put out on this, the polling that's been done, shows that women are more likely to be pro-life than men are. And as you and I both know, the pro-life movement is overwhelmingly dominated by women.
My personal opinion is that the Democrat Party has been kind of patronizing towards women. I mean, we remember Gloria Steinem having that discussion about why women were voting for Bernie, and she said, oh, well, their boyfriends are voting for Bernie, so that's where they're voting. As if all these girls are just following their boyfriends. And they had this ridiculous line when Hillary was running about, like, vote with your lady parts, which just because we're women doesn't mean we're going to vote for a woman. Just because we're a woman doesn't mean we're going to vote the way you think we should.
Right. They're assuming that all these women that are now coming in are all pro-aborts.
Because they believe in identity politics.
Right. And they believe that all women buy the party line and vote in lockstep.
They believe that all women believe that if by taking away abortion that we're all going to be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen in a few months. They also do this same thing with African Americans. They believe they should vote a certain way. They do this with the Hispanic community. Yep. I mean, they do this with every single voting bloc. And it's because they are deluded by identity politics.
Yep. And they may find out that a lot of these women that are coming into the deal are saying, hey, finally, we can vote to stop abortion. So, why isn't that just as legitimate a position? But the media is pushing this thing hard.
Yeah.
And there's another article in the Dallas paper today about it, and it's absolutely unbelievable how biased the media has become over the years, and it's getting worse. But anyway, we said earlier that we want to talk about the issue of talking to abortion-minded women.
Because this is a question a lot.
It comes up a lot.
What do I say to my friend, or what do I say to this woman who I've met who's considering abortion? What do I say? And unfortunately, there's no magic combination of words.
There's no silver bullet.
Yeah, that's going to make her change her mind.
And this is especially a problem among very young girls that are in college or in high school, and they have a friend, and they don't know what to say. They know it's wrong, but they don't know what to say to them. First off, let me say, I think that you mentioned patronizing women a minute ago. I think we need to quit patronizing women when it comes to this issue.
How so?
Well, we have this tendency, when I say we, I mean society in general, to treat these women like they're fragile little waifs. And if you're too straightforward with them, you'll offend them, or you'll hurt them, or you'll make them mad. And I think that that's patronizing to these women. I think we ought to treat them like adults and talk to them like adults. They're not children who have to be sheltered from the real world and insulated from the consequences of their own behavior. We should be talking to these women like they're adults.
So give an example. What do you mean when you say that?
Well, we're reluctant very often to say, well, wait a minute. You're thinking about having an abortion. Well, let's characterize that for what it is. You're thinking about killing your baby. And you say, oh, you can't say to this woman. You'll harm her forever, and she'll be 25 years from now. She'll be thinking about your saying that.
Well, as a woman, do they think that we don't intrinsically know that anyways?
Right. And that's what I'm saying. Why do we put these kid gloves on when talking to these women? And I'm not saying that you berate them and you say, oh, you're just a skanky old, whatever.
Yeah.
And, you've heard me talk to women that have called here that mistakenly think we do abortions for some reason. I don't know where this comes from, but they do. And I'm very straightforward with them. And I've had a lot of success with that. And I'm very clear and say, well, wait a minute. Why would you kill your own baby? Because women know what they're pregnant with. It's not a mystery.
It's not a mystery. It's not a glob of cells like the pro-choice community says.
Do you think there was ever a woman who gave birth and then they showed her baby and she says,
whoa, I wasn't expecting that to come
I didn't
out
know
there.
That was what they,
I thought I was going to get a pony.
Yeah. What is this? So I think we need to stop this nonsense of treating women like children and treat them like adults. If women want to be equal to men, which they are, they're not interchangeable with men.
But they're equal.
But they're equal with men. We would say that to a man, for example, if he went out and said, I don't want to be a father, so I'm going to kill my unborn baby that my girlfriend or wife or whoever is carrying. I'm going to intentionally kill that baby. We wouldn't have a problem saying you killed that baby.
Yeah.
We'd have no problem at all. Well, why do we assume that he's strong enough to take that, but she's not? We need to start talking to these women like they're adults.
Yeah.
And treating them like they're adults.
I would point out that the pro-choice side constantly lies to them, calling it products of conception, globs of cells, no big deal. There's no emotional consequences whatsoever. I mean, these are all claims that they make. So are we going to join the pro-choice side in lying to women?
We have.
When you look at it, I mean, that's really what it is.
We very often have. And I'm just saying that let's start treating these women like what they are. I mean, unless you're dealing with someone who's mentally unstable or mentally deficient or something, and they're, if you're dealing with a 30-year-old pregnant woman who's got the mind of a 6-year-old, then that's another situation. She is a child, in effect. But what's interesting? A couple of times when I've been talking to these women and I've said, you do know you're killing a baby, right? You're killing your own baby. You'd be surprised how many of them have said to me, I know that. I remember a specific time when a woman called here wanting to know about abortions. And she was wanting to get a price. She was shopping around for the cheapest price. And so I started talking to her like that. And she said, you're not telling me anything I don't already know. She said, I know it's a baby. I've already had 2 abortions, and I know they were babies. And she said, I'm going to have an abortion, and I know it's killing a baby. And if I get pregnant again a year from now, I'm going to have another abortion. So why would we treat this person with kid gloves and act like they're made out of sugar candy? That they're just going to wither away if you say anything harsh to them. They need to know what they're doing. She needs to know when she lays on that table, puts her feet in the stirrups, that somebody is about to kill her baby.
I don't know, but I wonder if, because we've heard from so many women who have had abortions say that they wish somebody had talked them out of it or said something to them in the waiting room or said something. And I wonder how many of these women are waiting or hoping that somebody will
bring that up.
Will say something like that. We'll put it in the most accurate of terms for them.
And that is blunt. If you say you're going to kill your baby, that's accurate, but it's also blunt. And maybe that's exactly what they need. They need someone, and I've had this, and you've heard this around here. I've had this conversation with these women who told me I was sitting in the waiting room, waiting on them to call my name, just hoping somebody would talk me out of this or something would happen. Some
sign or something.
Something that I could not do this. I guarantee you, they talk about choice. But there's a very high percentage of women who have abortions because they think they have no choice.
Yeah.
They've been given no choice. Their boyfriend, their husband said, you're doing this.
Forced abortions is a huge problem. And the pro-choice community, specifically the abortion industry, knows this is a problem.
Right.
But they don't feel like they need to do anything differently with these women because it's an industry for them. It's about a product.
The issue of force works to their benefit.
Yeah.
They get paid when these women cave into this force. And so they're not going to oppose it. It'd be like General Motors saying, we oppose people being forced to buy GM cars. Really?
Yeah.
You really do you? Nobody would believe that.
I want to point out that sometimes a woman is coerced or pressured into an abortion by a medical provider of hers. Well, a good example of that is Marla Cardamone.
Yeah.
She was pressured into an abortion by a medical counselor because the counselor told her that the medication she was taking was going to have a severe impact on her baby and that she couldn't have this baby because her father was disabled and kept pressuring her, kept calling her, trying to convince her to have an abortion until she caved.
And they killed her. They killed not only her baby, but they killed Marla. And the autopsy showed that there was no problem with the baby, by the way. So, there's all kinds of force and coercion. Sometimes employers, if you're up for a big promotion, but we can't give it to you if you're going to be saddled with a kid. And that's not uncommon. There's also a subtle kind of coercion that we see, especially with teenage girls.
Yeah.
And the pro-life movement is even, and conservatives and pro-family people have even bought into this to some degree. And that is, we tell these girls when they're not pregnant, if you get pregnant, that's the end of the world. We think we can talk them out of teen sex
By telling them that pregnancy is the end of be all end all. Yeah.
Yeah. If you get pregnant, you'll never be able to finish your school. You'll
have to drop out.
Yeah. If the guy doesn't marry you, then later down the road, you'll
never be able to get married.
You'll never be able to get married because no guy's going to want to raise somebody else's kid.
All of which is not true.
We've heard all of this. And we even hear it from sometimes, like I said, from pro-life, pro-family people who are doing abstinence-based education. And they'll tell them, you're always risking pregnancy. And if you do that, these are the horrible things that will happen. And then when a girl does get pregnant, we try to talk her out of doing the one thing that will do away with the horror.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. And then we're surprised why sometimes it doesn't work.
Right.
Because the girl is convinced her life is going to be over.
Right. She's convinced this is the end of the line. I'm going to be barefoot and pregnant for the rest of my life, and I'm never going to be able to finish school. I'm never going to have anything. I'm going to be poor. I'm going to be on welfare. And so that's a force in and of itself, not where any one person sits down and points a finger at her and says, you're going to do this. We've created the environment where she's already primed to do this.
Yeah. And the abortion industry will also tell these teenagers the same thing. Like, you can't afford to get pregnant.
Right.
Your life will be over. You want to go to college? You can't do that with a baby. You want to have a career? You can't do that with a baby.
So here, give us $600 and get up on the table, and we'll take care of the problem.
Yeah.
So we've got to start doing a better job. And I faced this with Sheila when she was little. And we made it clear, obviously, you're not supposed to be having sex before you're married. We made all that stuff
We're
clear.
not condoning.
We're not,
Yeah.
But if you get pregnant, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
We'll work through it. Somehow or another, we'll do whatever it takes to get you through this. But a lot of girls in this world have gotten pregnant when they were 14 or 15 years old and went on to live very productive, very happy lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
In fact, most of them do.
I think it's important for parents to sit down with their kids and say, look, I don't want you out having sex, but if you get pregnant, I want you to know that I am always
Come here.
Come to me. We
Right.
will work this out. We will help you. Your life is not over.
We will not disown you.
We won't kick you out.
We won't kill you. You hear these girls say, if my daddy finds this out, he'll kill me. Well, no, he won't.
He might kill the guy, but he's not going to kill
The guy, and rightly so, but he won't kill you. But, we had a young lady, as you know, worked for us. And she had a daughter who at that time I think was 15 or 16. I can't remember which now. And she had a boyfriend. I remember this employee coming to me one day. We were talking about some project we were working on. And she brought up this issue of so-and-so's got a new boyfriend, and I'm really concerned they are hanging all over each other, and they're in love.
teenagers, yeah.
Yeah, this is going to last forever, like every teenage romance is going to. And a month later,
it's no more.
It's gone.
Yeah.
But anyway, she said, I'm just so scared, and I've had conversations with her and told her, the last thing in the world you want to do is get pregnant and yada, yada, yada. And the way she was describing it, it was going to be, she had basically told her daughter, it's the end of the world. And I said, hey, have you thought about the fact that because of what you've said to her, if she does get pregnant, it's highly likely that she'll have an abortion, even though she's a very pro-life girl.
Or at least you'll have made it so that she seriously considers it.
And she's not going to be talking to you because she now knows that she's a big disappointment to you and your husband and have done something that could end her life right here when she's 16 years old. And she said, I had never in a million years thought about that. And she said, I'm calling her and we're going to go out to lunch today and I'm going to talk to her about that. She said, I'd never thought, but she said, you're exactly right. If she's convinced by me that getting pregnant is the end of the world, she's probably going to do what it takes for it not to be the end of the world.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you something else that's interesting. Years ago, when my wife was on the board of the Crisis Pregnancy Center here in Denton, and we used our house as what they call a shepherding home, which means that if they're dealing with a girl who's being thrown out of her house or being abandoned or put out on the streets, we're willing to take them in. And we did a couple of times. I remember this one particular girl, and we met with her, and she had told the CPC counselor that her parents have always told her, how horrible it is if you get pregnant as a teenager, because her mother had gotten pregnant as a teenager. And she said, oh, my daddy will kill me, and my mother will abandon me, and my grandmother will hate me, and just on down the line.
Yeah.
If she went home and told her parents she was pregnant, which she was, they were just going to set her out on the curb and say, go. We don't care what happens to you. And this little girl was absolutely convinced that this was true. And so we met with her and said, well, okay, if that's what happens, or if you're afraid that's what's going to happen, and you're just afraid to go home, whatever, I said, you can come live with us. We have a nice house, and we have a separate area that's got its own bathroom, and you just stay there until you're back up on your feet. You can have your baby there or place your baby for adoption or whatever you want to do. And so she was relieved. We took that pressure off of her. The Crisis Pregnancy Center had a program there where if a girl was afraid to go home and tell her parents, they would go with her. They had a counselor that would go with her. So the counselor went with her that night and told her parents what the situation was. Turns out the parents were upset for a minute, but they didn't throw her out. They weren't mad at her. Her father didn't kill her. He didn't go get a butcher knife and, chase her around the house or anything. And she found out that most of this fear was fear that she had created in her own mind based on what she'd heard in the society. Oh, yeah, it's the end of your life, and,
your parents will do this, that, and the other, yeah.
And the grandmother apparently had a little bit of money and said, don't worry about it. Whatever the finances are, we'll take care of it. If you want to place your baby for adoption, fine. If you want to help raise the baby, that's fine. And she said, I will do whatever it takes financially to help you as long as you promise me that you won't quit school. And the girl promised her she wouldn't quit school and wound up going to UNT, by the way. Anyway, what we found out is we offered to use our home for a shepherding home several times, and only once did we ever have to.
Yeah.
There's not that many parents that are going to abandon their child. There's kick them out. There's not that many parents that are going to become violent with them, contrary to what the pro-aborts will tell you. That's not common. If it were, when you look at the teenage pregnancy rate in this country, there'd be dead pregnant teenagers laying in the streets all over the country. Yeah. If this was as bad a situation as they want you to think it is. So I just think we've got to kind of revamp the way we approach this issue.
I was talking to a pro-lifer who frequently talks to women on the sidewalks and that sort of situation. And what they told me is that usually each and every woman has their own specific fear, a thing that they're concerned about. And when you're talking to women, you have to identify and figure out what is their base fear. What is their biggest thing that they're really concerned about in relation to this child? And if you can help them solve that, the idea of abortion tends to go out the window pretty quickly.
Right.
And I think it has to do with this loss of control that women feel when they're in an unplanned pregnancy. Everything has gone out. It's not planned. They feel like they're not in control of their lives anymore. And if you can just do a little bit to help them feel that they're in control again.
Yeah, if we can return control to her, that doesn't involve killing her baby.
Yeah.
Most of these women will jump at that opportunity because they do feel like their life is out of control.
So what is a couple of other things that you would suggest to people who are talking to a woman or a teenager who is considering abortion? Do you have any other, besides talking to them like they're adults, what else do you have, what you would say to them?
I don't think there's a magic formula. I think it goes back to kind of what you talked about a moment ago, where you have to talk to them like an adult and say, okay, what is the big problem here? Let's find out in each individual woman's case what the big problem is going to be if this baby is allowed to live. And I think you have to craft your approach to them based on that. But I think if you start talking to them based on what your perceptions are before you know what their concern is, you're talking past them.
This kind of goes back to what you always say with your background in the auto industry and being a car salesman. If you want to sell something to somebody, you have to listen first. You have to listen to what they want and what their needs are.
Right.
And I think probably when somebody says, I'm considering abortion, their first thought is, oh, I'm going to start telling them all these things and medical facts and everything, as opposed to listening first, hearing what they're concerned about and afraid about, and then responding.
Well, I started out in the auto industry as a salesman. I sold Volkswagens, by the way, little bugs.
VW bugs.
Little Volkswagen bugs. And by the way, when I started selling, this is almost unbelievable. When I started selling Volkswagen Beetles, the base price on a Volkswagen, what's called a Type 1, just a standard Beetle, was less than $1,900.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
I can't imagine buying a car brand new for less than $1,900.
I can remember in the sales meeting one time.
I'd be afraid the car would fall apart. I'm going down the road, just like a door fall off.
When they announced we got a price increase, and the price went from like 1986, base price on a Beetle, to like 2026. And I can remember one of the old salesmen in there saying, well, we'll never sell another one. Nobody's going to pay $2,000 for a Volkswagen. It's just not going to happen.
Fast forward to cars being $30,000.
Yeah. But anyway, I started out selling cars, and eventually I became a dealer. But and all that time, I saw a lot of really good salesmen, saw a lot of really bad ones. And I can tell you, everybody thinks that the best salesmen are the best talkers. They're not.
They're the best listeners.
They're the best listeners. That's the best salesman that you get. Find out what's motivating your customer to think about buying a new car. That's what you need to know. Now you can talk to him. If you just start throwing out a bunch of platitudes the minute he walks in the door, probably 90% of it he doesn't care about.
Yeah.
It's a waste of time. Before we leave, I want to make people understand this is a two-part show. Next week, we're going to continue this discussion because this is a very important issue. And we're going to introduce to the audience that may not know about it, 2 products that we make at Life Dynamics. And we make them available, I mean, almost free. But well, one of them is free.
One of them is free, yeah.
And
we're just those kind of people.
Yeah. And we will even make the other one available free if they just want it over the internet and don't want, you know. But anyway, we'll talk about that next week. And they work. They save babies. They've saved thousands of babies over the years.
We'll also be talking about a situation or environment in the pro-life movement, which is hurting our pro-life effort and is potentially causing abortions.
It absolutely is causing abortions. And we'll talk about it more in depth next week. Be sure to get the second half of this show next week. I think you'll get a lot out of it, and I hope you've gotten a lot out of this. And
if you have any questions along this issue of talking to women who are considering abortion, if you'll send them in before the next show, we could potentially be answering your question on the show.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Go to lifedynamics.com/podcast, and there's a form right there on the page where you can do it. You can also leave a comment on the episode page on our website for this episode. If you put your comments, questions, concerns there, we will try to see if we can fit them in for the next episode.
Right. If you have other things you want to see us discuss, put it on there.
Same place.
We get a lot of our shows suggested to us by listeners. So if you have something you want us to talk about, just let us know. Anyway, that's all I have for this week. And until next Thursday, remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight.
We're here to win.
Because winning is how the killing stops. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Bye, guys.